It was supposed to be a fun weekend getaway with friends, a chance to escape the hustle and bustle of city life and reconnect with nature. But as the sun began to set and the shadows grew longer, the mood around the campfire shifted from laughter and camaraderie to unease and fear. It started with strange noises coming from the surrounding woods, rustling leaves and snapping twigs that seemed to be getting closer and closer. We tried to brush it off as just the sounds of the forest coming alive at night, but the feeling of being watched never quite went away. As we settled into our tents for the night, the temperature dropped drastically and a thick fog rolled in, obscuring our surroundings and making it impossible to see more than a few feet in front of us. The crackling of the fire seemed to be the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. But then, the fire suddenly went out, plunging us into complete darkness. Panic set in as we fumbled for flashlights and tried to relight the fire, but no matter what we did, the flames refused to catch. And that's when we heard it, a low, guttural growl coming from just beyond the edge of the campsite. We huddled together, hearts pounding in our chests, as the growling grew louder and closer. Shadows moved in the darkness, and we could feel eyes watching us from the trees. It was then that we realized we were not alone in the woods, and whatever was out there was not friendly. In a moment of sheer terror, we abandoned our campsite and ran blindly through the woods, branches scratching at our faces and thorns tearing at our clothes. We didn't stop until we reached the safety of the nearest town, where we collapsed in exhaustion and relief, vowing never to return to that cursed campground again. To this day, we still don't know what lurked in the darkness that night, but the memory of our camping horror story will haunt us forever, and we can only hope that whatever it was, it never finds its way back to civilization. I went camping with some friends and we had a fun time filled with laughter and adventure. We enjoyed being surrounded by nature's beauty. But something scary happened that I will never forget. During the day, my friends had to leave the campsite to get some supplies from town, so I was alone with my dog. I didn't mind being by myself. In fact, I liked the quietness of the area, but I started hearing strange noises coming from the bushes nearby. At first, I thought it was a small animal moving around. What as the day went on, the noises got louder and clearer. It felt like something or someone was hiding in the shadows, just out of sight. My dog perked up his ears and growled softly, looking at where the noises were coming from. I got curious and decided to go check it out. I walked cautiously to the bushes, my heart beating fast. But when I got close, the sound stopped, and it was silent again. When the sun started setting, my friends came back to the campsite. I was relieved to have them there. I told them about the strange noises I heard, but they said it was probably just my imagination or harmless animals. I wanted to believe them, but I still felt something was wrong. Night came, and it got dark. We sat around the fire, talking and laughing. My dog stayed close to me, watching everything carefully. Suddenly, one of my friends went to use the bathroom, and then we heard a scream. It was my friend. We ran to help our friend and found him frozen in fear. He pointed to the edge of the campsite, and they're standing about 20 feet away. What's a cougar? Its eyes locked on us. We all got scared, realizing that it had been following us all day. Without thinking, one of my friend grabbed his gun and shot at the cougar, but he missed. The cougar got scared and ran away into the darkness. We were all shaken up thinking about what had just happened. For the rest of the night, we stayed close together, listening carefully to every little sound. Morning came and we quickly packed up our things. We couldn't wait to leave that scary campsite behind. As we walked back to safety, the events of the previous night stayed with us, never leaving our minds. I feel like the cougar didn't attack me in the day because of my dog, and I can't help but wonder what would have happened if my dog wasn't there. Once me and my friends decided to go camping near Akama. We were really excited about spending the night fishing, so we packed up our gear and set off. When it got dark, we set up our tents and started a small fire. The atmosphere was relaxed and full of laughter as we told stories and had a good time. We also ate mushrooms. After a few minutes, we decided to go fishing. As we were fishing, things took a very scary turn. We heard a sudden and loud noise coming from up the hill nearby. We all froze in fear, Although it was too dark to see, we still started staring into the darkness. After a few minutes of silence, we gathered our courage and tried to continue fishing. We still felt uneasy. We kept fishing and joking around, trying really hard to forget about the strange noise. But after around 10 minutes, we heard another loud noise, even louder this time. It sounded like something heavy crashed into a tree nearby. Our hearts raced and we all turned our head. I need to look for where the sound came from, and that's when we saw it. Standing at the edge of the trees was a figure that terrified us. It was pale and completely naked, hunched over and staring straight at us. The video didn't move, making us wonder what it wanted. Then, out of nowhere, it turned and disappeared into the bushes, moving like a wild animal on all fours. We were filled with fear, pushing aside any logical thoughts. We quickly packed up our things, not wasting a single second. Panic made us move as fast as we could to get away from that terrible place. As we hurried away, we couldn't stop thinking about what we had just seen. The image of that pale figure haunted us and made us feel really uneasy for a long time. We decided to never go camping again, scared of what we might encounter. Even today, I'm not sure what we really saw that night by the lake. When I was about 14 years old, my family and I decided to go camping. It was a nice summer evening. We set up our tents in a cozy campground surrounded by tall trees. We were all excited for a night of sleeping under the stars. As it got dark, I decided to sleep in my own tent instead of my parents'. The night was peaceful, with only the sound of leaves rustling and owls hooting every once in a while. As I was laying in my sleeping bag, trying to fall asleep, all of a sudden, I heard a fan noise coming from outside my tent. My heart started racing, and I strained my ears to listen. The noise grew louder, along with heavy breathing that sounded like it was right next to me. I felt really scared. I couldn't take the fear anymore, so I called out to my parents, hoping they would hear me. The sound of their 10 Super broke the silence, and my dad's voice came through the darkness. "It's just a raccoon, go back to sleep." I felt relieved by his words and calmed down enough to fall asleep. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was peeking through the trees, making the campground look warm and inviting. I noticed some commotion nearby, so I went to see what was happening. Park rangers were running around with serious looks on their faces. I was curious, so I went up to one of the rangers and asked what was going on. The ranger told me, "We found the bear not too far from here. It had come into the campground, probably because it smelled food. Luckily, we were able to shoot it with a tranquilizer before it could hurt anyone." I realized my dad had lied and said it was just a raccoon, so I wouldn't panic. I always like going on exciting journeys, so when my friend suggested we go camping by a lake, couldn't say no. We set up our tents in a quiet place, surrounded by tall trees in the calm sounds of the lake. The evening was peaceful, with only the sound of animals, and when it got dark, we settled down for a night under the stars. In the middle of the night, I suddenly woke up because I heard a strange noise. I was still sleepy and tried to figure out what was going on. As my eyes got used to the dim light, I saw 2 baby bears. One baby bear was sitting right outside our tent, staring at us with its small eyes. Another baby bear was under the table, trying to move it with its back. My heart raced as I realized how serious the situation was. I knew that if there were bear cubs, the mother bear must be close. Panicked, but I knew that making any sudden moves could make the bear attack us. I had to stay completely still. My friends were awake too and looked just as scared as I was. We held our breath and prayed that the bears would lose interest and leave. It felt like a really long time as we lay there, not moving or saying anything. Finally, after what felt like forever, we heard a sound of movement. The mama bear had arrived. The babies quickly went to her side, and they all left our camp. We watched it all in relief as they disappeared into the dark. Even though the immediate danger was gone, our hearts still beat fast. We knew that bears were unpredictable, and there was no way of knowing if they would come back or not. We decided it was best to go back to our car where we would be safe. We went inside there and felt a bit safe and relieved. We were exhausted, but we couldn't. Every little noise made us feel scared and nervous. As the night slowly turned into morning, we came out of our car. The campsite was completely quiet. We quickly packed up and left. I once went backpacking in New Mexico with my friend. We were exploring a really beautiful valley, surrounded by tall mountains and lots of green plants. When the day started to get dark and the shadows got longer, we decided it was time to find a place to set up camp for the night. As it got darker, I felt something was wrong. It wasn't just because it was getting dark, but there was a feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to ignore it and thought it was just me being paranoid. We focused on setting up our tents. When I got inside my tent, in my cozy sleeping bag, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. It felt like someone was looking at me from the top of the mountain nearby. I felt scared and my body felt tingly. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. The night went on, and I felt more and more scared. Every time I heard leaves rustling or now hooting in the distance, I got really scared. I listened carefully for any signs of danger. Finally, morning came, and we quickly packed up our camps. As we walked down the trail, about 100%, we saw something really scary. There was a dead deer on the ground, torn apart and partly eaten by a mountain lion. I felt really scared when I realized what had happened. The mountain lion had been hiding near our campsite, waiting for a chance to attack. If it hadn't found the deer, it might have attacked us instead. I felt really lucky and relieved that we were safe. We kept going on our trip, but we walked faster because we didn't want to stay near the danger. I remember the time I went on a drive through the big Kalahari Desert with my friend. It was a few years ago, but I still remember it very clearly. We found a good spot to set up camp as the sun was setting. The desert looked never-ending with its yellow sand and few plants. We were excited to see the untouched beauty of nature in this remote place. We started cooking dinner over a small fire, and the flames made us feel warm in the cool desert evening. Settling, we heard lions roaring in the distance. It made us scar, knowing that we were not alone in this huge place. To keep ourselves safe, we turned on the bright lights of our car, thinking that we would at least be able to see them if they tried coming near us. But this decision brought a new problem we didn't expect. When the lights shined, we saw movement on the ground. We were horrified to see that there were hundreds of scorpions coming towards our camp because of the light. We felt really scared because now we were trapped between scorpions all around us. We had no choice but to spend the rest of the night in the car, seeking shelter from the dangerous outside. It was dark and scary, and every noise we heard, like a growl, made our hearts beat faster. We couldn't sleep that night, huddled together in the cramped space of the car. The night felt like it would never end. We longed for the sun to come up and bring an end to the scary night. Finally, as the morning approached, we felt a huge sense of relief, knowing that we survived. With the sun shining, we left the safety of the car and packed up our camp quickly. We were exhausted and our minds were affected by the terrifying things we experienced. We wanted to leave that empty place as soon as possible. I used to lead a group of Cub Scouts. One weekend, we planned a camping trip at a special campsite. On a sunny Saturday morning, we set up our campsite. The boys were excited and happy, setting up the tents either. We were in a peaceful area surrounded by tall trees and thick bushes, creating a calm atmosphere. As evening came, we gathered around a campfire. We shared stories. The boys were captivated, listening to tales of adventure. The darkness slowly approached, and we decided to sleep. After we settled the boys into their tents, I got ready for a good night's sleep in my own. I look forward to resting under the beautiful starry sky. But around 2 a.m., a scream jolted me awake. The sound was filled with terror, as if someone's life was in danger. Without hesitation, I rushed out of my tent and ran towards the boys' tents. My heart raced, fear gripping me tightly. My main concern was the safety of the boys. When I reached the row of tents, the screaming suddenly stopped. It went completely silent. I looked around, searching for any sign of danger or trouble. Everything seemed normal. The other leaders joined me too, looking just as worried and confused as I was. To my surprise, none of the boys were awake. It was as if the screen never even occurred. In the morning, we gathered the boys together. They seemed on hand and unaware of what happened. We asked them if they heard anything at night, but they were as clueless as we were. None of them heard a thing. We searched the campsite for any signs of an intruder or animal but found nothing. There were no footprints or anything to explain the scary screen. In September, I went on a camping trip in the woods to get some peace and escape the city life. But I didn't want to sleep in a tent because there were bears in that area. Instead, I decided to sleep in my car to stay safe. Before I started my adventure, I made sure to buy lots of snacks and pack enough food to last me throughout the trip. The weather was nice, not too hot, which was perfect for exploring the wilderness. With everything ready, I went into the woods and found a good spot to park my car. As it got dark, I made a fire and sat down to eat my snacks and read a book. The crackling fire made me feel calm and everything seemed peaceful around me. When night came, I went back to my car to sleep. It was around 10 p.m., and I was tired. I put down the back seats to make a cozy bed. What's a full stomach? I expected to have a good night's sleep, but my peaceful sleep was disturbed. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of growling outside my car. My heart races. I realized it was a bear, probably attracted to the smell of food from my car. It was pitch black outside, so I couldn't see anything. I strained my ears and listened carefully as the bear walked around my car growling. But the bear didn't go away. Feeling desperate, I made a quick decision. I quickly jumped into the driver's seat and started the car. The engine wore to life, and without wasting any time, I drove far away from the bear. I drove my car for about 10 minutes and parked it on another clearing nearby. Tired and shaken up, I finally felt safe in my car. I fell back asleep, grateful for the break from the scary encounter. The next morning, as the sun rose, I wasn't feeling scared anymore. So I ate some snacks and enjoyed the beautiful weather for a bit, and then left the place at around 11 a.m. As a photographer who travels to different places to take pictures of nature, I love my job. It's exciting to discover beautiful landscapes and capture them with my camera. But there was one incident that scared me a lot, and it happened while I was in Alaska. Everything was going well as I explored Alaska's untouched beauty. The snowy mountains, sparkling glaciers, and peaceful forest amazed me. I was truly enjoying my work, capturing the incredible wonders of nature. As the day ended, the sunset, and the sky turned magical, I decided to rest in my cozy van, tired from the day's adventures. I fell asleep quickly, but suddenly I woke up to a noise. Someone was trying to open the door of my van. I felt terrified. I was in the middle of nowhere, all alone, my heart racing, and I didn't dare move. The person kept trying to get in. I was full of fear. Being so far away from help made it even scarier. After what felt like forever, the person gave up and left. I felt summer, but the fear didn't go away. I stayed still, listening carefully for any sign of them returning. Minutes passed, and there were no signs of anyone near my van. The danger was gone. Exhausted and scared, I managed to fall asleep again. In the morning, I moved my van to a different place to continue my work. As I got out of my van, Alaska's beautiful landscapes welcomed me, making me feel comforted. But I couldn't forget what happened that night. It stayed in my mind. Remind me how vulnerable I was in the wilderness. I still love photography, but I'm now more careful and aware of the potential dangers. One cold evening, my girlfriend and I decided to go on a camping trip in the woods. We found a nice spot to set up and got ready for a peaceful getaway. As we got settled, we noticed another couple camping nearby. They seemed harmless, a man and a woman in their 50s. They came over and started talking to us, acting friendly. At first, we were okay with their company, thinking they were just other campers looking for a chat. But something didn't feel right. The man couldn't take his eyes off my girlfriend, staring at her in a really intense and uncomfortable way. She started feeling more and more uneasy, like anyone would, when someone looks at them like that. When it was around 6 p.m., I politely suggested that they go back to their own tents so we could have some privacy. The man seemed disappointed, but he agreed and went back to their campsite. My girlfriend told me how uncomfortable his stare made her feel. I reassured her that I had noticed it too. That's why I asked them to leave. When night came, we got into our sleeping bags, hoping for a peaceful sleep under the stars. But at some point in the night, our sleep was ruined by the sound of footsteps and whispers getting closer. To our horror, it was the same couple from earlier lurking outside our tent for no apparent reason. Fear took over as we wondered why they were at our campsite. After what felt like forever, we were left confused and on edge. Morning came, and we felt relieved. The couple acted like nothing strange had happened the night before. Approaching us with friendly smiles and trying to talk to us, we made up excuses, saying we had urgent things to take care of, and quickly packed our things and left. I love camping and always brought my handgun with me for safety. It was something I never left behind. On this night, I parked my car and set up my tent nearby. As evening came, I started a campfire and enjoyed my meal, while admiring the beautiful woods around me. As night came, I started feeling tired and went to sleep in my tent. But in the middle of the night, strange sounds woke me up. It seems like something or someone was walking just a few steps from my tent, if you're starting to rise. But I tried my best to calm down. After thinking about it, I believe that the sounds might be coyotes. The steps with too light for a big animal. Unsure of what to do, I decided to shoot a warning shot into the air, hoping it would scare the coyotes without hurting them. So I shot a warning shot straight through the roof of my tent. The loud noise echoed through the night, and for a moment, everything went silent. It seemed like my plan worked because I heard the coyotes running away. Frightened by the sudden sound, realizing I was safe for the moment, I didn't waste any time and quickly left my tent and ran inside my car. Exhausted and shaken, I managed to fall asleep, hoping that the morning light would bring a sense of normalcy and ease my anxiousness. When the sun rose and its one rays filled the campsite, I came out of the car, cautiously looking around. What I saw was chilling. My once perfect tent was torn apart. Now I can't help but think, what would have happened if I hadn't brought my handgun with me? I went camping in the woods near a beautiful cliff. The view was amazing and I loved it. When it got dark, I made a fire and sat close to it, enjoying my dinner. The communists of the area made me enjoy every moment. Around midnight, I started feeling tired, so I decided to go into my tent. I fell asleep easily, feeling comfortable in my sleeping bag. But suddenly I woke up because I heard footsteps near my tent. I felt scared and my heart started beating fast. Who could be outside in the middle of the night? The footsteps came closer to the zipper of my tent, and then started opening it. I panicked because I realized it wasn't an animal making the noise. It was a man. I was really scared, but I gathered all my courage and shouted with my deepest voice, "Get away from me." In that weird moment, the man's voice echoed through the darkness. He said, sounding surprised and scared. I could hear his footsteps getting faster as he ran away from my tent. It got really quiet after that, and I was left feeling shaken and wide awake. I lay there, listening really carefully for any signs of the person coming back. Every little noise, like leaves rustling or a twig snapping, made me jump. I stayed alert, afraid of another encounter. Finally, the first bit of sunlight started to come through the trees, shining a small light on where I was. I felt relieved but still shaken, so I carefully unzipped my tent and went outside. I packed up my camping stuff and walked back to the city. I couldn't stop feeling a little worried. I still don't know who that man was. Was he just lost? What was he there to harm me? I still remember that camping trip like it was yesterday. It was a really nice day when I got to the woods. The sun was shining through the tall trees, making the forest floor look warm and golden. I was so excited as I set up my tent and got ready for a day of hiking and exploring. As the day went on, I went deeper into the woods and was amazed by all the beautiful nature around me. It was so peaceful and calming, and I felt really relaxed in the quietness. When the sun started to go down and it got dark, I went back to my campsite to rest after a tiring day. I got into my sleeping bag, closed my eyes, and was almost about to fall asleep when I heard a noise that scared me. At first, it was a soft sound, like someone crying far away. But as time went on, the noise got louder and turned into a scream. It was a really high-pitched scream, like someone in a lot of pain. My heart was racing, and I was sweating because I was so scared. I tried really hard to hear and understand the terrifying sounds that were echoing all around me. To my horror, it sounded like someone was being hurt really badly, like someone being stabbed again and again. Felt like it went on forever, but it was actually only for a minute. I've never been so scared in my life. I couldn't move because I was so terrified. I just knew something really bad was happening in the darkness. I couldn't fall asleep for the rest of the night. Finally, morning came and I felt relieved. I quickly packed up my things and wanted to leave that scary place behind. On my way back to the town, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I told my friends about it, hoping they could explain it. Even though they came up with a logical explanation, it didn't really help my troubled mind. They said it might have been a mountain lion, which is known for making eerie cries, but it didn't sound like any animal I had ever heard before. The cries were so creepy and human-like. When I was about 12 years old, my family and I decided to go camping. We went hiking in the woods during the day, and when we got back to our campsite, we were all really tired. After we ate dinner, we decided it was time to sleep. I told my parents that I wanted to sleep in my own tent, but they didn't let me, so I had to sleep with them, even though I didn't want to. But in the middle of the night, I heard footsteps outside our tent. I woke up my parents quietly and told them about the noise. My dad, who was half asleep, said it was probably just a raccoon and told me to go back to sleep. I tried my best to ignore the strange footsteps and went back to sleep. The next morning, when I woke up, my mom and dad were already awake. I went outside the tent, and my dad told me to take a look at some footprints on the ground. He thought they were from a wolf that had come to our campsite. Even though it scared us, we decided to go fishing that day. While we were fishing, I couldn't stop feeling like something was watching us. Felt like something was hiding nearby, watching everything we did. But we caught some fish and cooked them for dinner that night. After eating the fish, we went to sleep. But at night, I suddenly woke up to the sound of footsteps and growling right outside our tent. I was really scared and woke up my mom and dad, but they were already awake. They told me to be quiet. I felt like they were scared too. I tried my best to be quiet, but my heart was beating really fast. We listened in fear as the wolf or whatever it was walked around outside our thin tent. After about 30 minutes, it suddenly ran away into the darkness of the woods. My parents tried to calm me down and told me it was gone. I eventually fell back asleep. In the morning when I woke up, I saw that my dad was standing outside our tent. He looked really tired and was holding his gun tightly. We quickly packed our things and left the campsite. My dad was really tired from the night's events, so my mom drove us home and he fell asleep in the car. It was quiet, and nobody said anything as we drove back home. So my boyfriend and I decided to go camping in the woods. We were excited about spending time together and enjoying nature's beauty. As evening came, we set up our tent and climbed inside. We snuggled up, hoping for a good sleep. Just as we were getting comfortable, we heard a notification sound outside our tent. It surprised us, making us jump. Suddenly, we heard a voice say, "OF ******." Fear gripped. We strained to listen, trying to understand what was happening. Suddenly, we heard footsteps of someone running away. My mind was filled with scary thoughts, imagining all sorts of things. Without wasting any time, we quickly got out of our tent. We packed our things as fast as we could, not wanting to look back. Fear pushed us to move quickly, not wanting to know what or who had been outside. We jumped into my boyfriend's car, desperate for safety. We drove away from the campsite. Finally, we reached my boyfriend's house, and I ended up sleeping at his house. I still don't know who that person was at the campsite and what he wanted. It was a cold evening when my brother and I went on another hunting trip in the woods. We had camped and hunted here many times before. We felt comfortable because we knew every part of this big wilderness. When it got dark, we set up our camp, putting up our tent under the tall trees. We got settled in, breathing in the cool air and enjoying the peacefulness around us. The rest of the night went by without anything happening. We talked about random stuff and went to sleep. But at 3:30 a.m., a weird sound broke the silence and woke us up. It was a strange noise, kind of like a broken machine making a buzzing sound. We looked at each other, not sure where the sound was coming from. It was a strange noise for the deep woods. We listened carefully, trying to figure out where it was coming from. The buzzing noise didn't stop. Half an hour went by, and then suddenly everything became quiet again. We felt relieved, but we decided to check it out. We unzipped the tent, looking out into the darkness. We stepped outside, looking around, hoping to find a clue about what had caused the noise. Everything seemed normal, but we packed up our stuff. I decided to leave. Our hearts were beating fast as we quickly headed towards the safety of the car. As we drove away from the woods, a feeling of relief washed over us. I went camping in a park. When I got to my campsite, I instantly fell in love with it. It was so perfect. Excitedly, I set up my tent and got settled, ready for a peaceful night in nature. As the sun went down, I made a campfire and sat around it, enjoying the warmth and the crackling sounds. Eventually, the fire died down, and I decided it was time for bed. I was tired from the day, and quickly fell asleep in my cozy tent. But in the middle of the night, I woke up suddenly to the sound of heavy footsteps. It was clear that these footsteps didn't belong to a small animal. The footsteps went around my tent, and then went away. I wanted to find out what had made those footsteps. So I unzipped my tent and peeked outside cautiously. To my horror, I saw a man stand, something about 20 feet away, looking right at me. My heart raced, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. I didn't waste a second and immediately ran away from the tent, desperately searching for help. I felt panic as I ran through the darkness. Luckily, I found a park ranger and explained the situation urgently. The ranger could tell I was really scared and agreed to come with me to the campsite to see what was going on. We were both afraid of what we might find. To our surprise and disbelief, when we got to my campsite, my tent was gone. It had disappeared along with all my things. The ranger and I were both confused and couldn't understand what had happened. By the way, they looked into it more, but the man was never found. My friend and I decided to go on a camping trip in the woods. We found a great spot near a small hill that was about 10 m tall. During the day, we went for a hike on the other side of the hill and enjoyed the beauty and calmness of nature. When the sun started to go down, we got ready for a cozy night under the stars. We lit a campfire. The campfire gave us warmth. I made us feel safe as we sat together, telling stories and laughing. The night was peaceful and we felt calm and relaxed in the middle of the night while we were sleeping. Give me an art tent. We suddenly woke up because we heard two people screaming on the other side of the hill. Their voices were filled with fear and desperation, and it made us feel scared. We looked at each other, worried and unsure of what was happening. The shouting became louder, and then all of a sudden there was a super loud gunshot that rang through the air, startled us and made us jump in fright. We felt panicked as we realized that something very bad was going on just beyond the hill. Adrenaline rushed through our bodies, and we quickly packed up our stuff, not wanting to waste any time. We felt an urgent need to get out of the woods as fast as we could, so we quickly drove away. Finally, when we made it to the civilization, we quickly told the police about what happened, and they investigated. They found a dead body on the other side of the hill. I always love going hiking, but this time, things got really scary. it started getting dark, and I had to use my phone's flashlight to find my way. I felt a sense of unease as I continued walking. That's when I heard faint footsteps, like someone walking behind me. I turned around, expecting to see another hiker, but no one was there. I brushed it off, thinking it was just my imagination because it was so dark. Our minds can play tricks on us when we're in the dark. Ignoring my fears, I kept going, hoping to find a spot to set up my tent for the night. Finally, I found a small open space, but I was still on edge. There was something bushes nearby that caught my attention. They seemed like a good hiding place, so I decided to camp behind them, feeling a little safer in my hidden cam. I crawled into my sleeping bag and fell asleep quickly, but in the middle of the night, I woke up suddenly and heard a low voice, like someone muttering angrily to themselves. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but the tone was clear. They were really frustrated. At first, the voice was coming towards me, but thankfully, it started moving further away into the woods. I didn't dare make a sound, too scared to move. The fact that my tent was hidden in the bushes gave me some comfort, but my mind was still racing with fear. Time seemed to stretch on forever as the voice faded away. I couldn't stop thinking about who that person could have been. What was he doing in the middle of the night? And was he dangerous? Morning came, and I quickly packed up my things. The ones didn't leave me, urging me to leave that place behind. With a heavy heart, I started hiking back to my car, which was an hour away. When I reached my car, I quickly threw my stuff in the back seat and drove away. It took around 30 minutes to reach home. I can't help but think, what would have happened if I didn't hide in those bushes? I don't want to find out. It was a beautiful day when I decided to go hiking in the big forest. The sun was shining really bright, and I was excited to explore the peaceful trails. As the hours went by, the sky gradually turned into a beautiful sunset. When it started to get dark in the forest, I had to use my phone's flashlight to find a clearing. While I kept walking, everything started feeling scarier. Suddenly, I heard faint footsteps nearby. I got really scared, so I stopped and used my flashlight to look around. But there was no one in sight. I thought maybe I was imagining things because it was dark. I found a clear area and decided to set up my tent for the night to find some comfort. I was really tired from the long hike, so I fell into a deep sleep. However, the scary things weren't over yet. The next morning, as I got out of my tent, I noticed something that really scared me. There were footprints all around my tent. I got really scared and tried to understand what had happened while I was asleep. To make things worse, there was an SUV parked around 50 square feet. It looked like it had been there long before I arrived. I felt my heart race as I realized that the person who had been following me in the dark might be connected to this SUV. I couldn't believe I hadn't noticed someone else was around. I had so many terrifying thoughts and knew I had to act quickly. Without wasting any time, I gathered my things and quickly put them in my backpack. But I continued my hike. The rest of my hike was calm and normal, and I finally felt relieved. Looking back on that scary experience, I couldn't help but wonder about the true intentions of the person or people who had followed me in the dark. I used to go camping on this campsite a lot, and I knew every trail and open area really well. It always made me feel peaceful and calm. But one day, something happened that turned my happy place into a really scary nightmare that I'll never forget. When I was walking to the campsite with my dog beside me, I saw a new trail that hadn't been there before. I got curious and decided to explore it instead of going my usual way. I thought I would just take a quick look and then go back to the regular trail. But I didn't know that my decision would change everything. I started going deeper into the new trail. I lost track of time and ended up wandering around for hours. When I realized how late it was, I hurried to find a place to set up my tent for the night. The forest was getting really dark, and it started to feel spooky. Finally, I found a small area where no one seemed to have been before. It was the perfect spot to camp for the night. I quickly put up my tent and felt relieved. As it got darker, I decided to light a fire. I went outside my tent with my lamp, and that's when I saw glowing eyes staring at me from the shadows. My dog, who usually isn't scared of anything, started growling and getting all puffed up. It was really scary to see him like that. I could tell whatever was out there wasn't a normal animal. The fear in my dog's eyes warned me that something was really wrong. And then, all of a sudden, the thing in the shadows let out a scream that made me freeze even more. It sounded like a crazy person laughing. Does scream echo to the night and ruin the calm that was there before? I was so scared that I packed up my stuff really fast, even though my hands were shaking like crazy. Without looking back, me and my dog started running away for whatever that thing was. I was freaking out, hoping that whatever was behind us wouldn't follow us. The only sounds I could hear were our footsteps. Finally, we got to my car and I tried to catch my breath while I fumbled with the keys. I looked back, half expecting to see the thing chasing us. But everything seems normal. I drove away, feeling scared and confused.